5, Britain won the greatest war in human history. The Nazi flag had fallen, London stood victorious, and Winston Churchill raised his cigar in triumph. The world still spoke of the British Empire as if it were eternal. But behind the victory parades and black and white newsreels, something far more dangerous was unfolding. Britain was bankrupt. Not weakened, not strained. Bankrupt. And within a single generation. The largest empire the world had ever known would be dismantled not by rebels, not by rival empires, not by armies, but debt. This is a story of how Britain didn't lose its empire, it sold it. When Britain entered World War II in 1939, it was a global superpower. It controlled a quarter of the Earth's land and ruled over nearly 500 million people. Its navy dominated the seas, but that power came with a price. Britain didn't fight the war with piles of gold. It fought with credit. From the very first year, Britain began bleeding money at an unimaginable rate. Every bomber, every tank, every ship crossing the Atlantic burned pounds faster than the economy could replace them. By 1941, Britain had sold most of its overseas investments. By 1942, it had melted down its gold reserves. By 1943, it had mortgaged its future. Britain survived the war not because it was rich, but because it was trusted. Trusted enough for the United States to lend it money. A lot of money. America didn't enter the war out of charity. President Franklin D. Roosevelt knew that if Britain fell, America would stand alone. So, the US created Lend-Lease, a financial miracle wrapped in diplomacy. America would supply Britain with ships, weapons, fuel, food, and machinery. Britain would pay later. By the end of the war, Britain owed the United States over $31 billion. Adjusted for today, that's hundreds of billions. But here was the catch. Britain had no realistic way to pay it back. Its cities were in ruins, its industries were exhausted, and its empire, once a source of wealth, had become a liability. The Americans knew it. In May 1945, the war in Europe ended. Crowds celebrated and flags waved. But inside the treasury, officials stared at numbers that told a different story. Britain's national debt stood at over 250% of its GDP. The country imported more food than it could afford. Its currency was weak, and its factories were outdated. Worst of all, Britain no longer had leverage. The empire was built when Britain was the world's creditor. Now, it was a debtor. So in 1946, Britain went to Washington, not as a ruler of the seas, but as the US offered a loan of $3.75 billion, but it came with crushing conditions. Britain had to make the pound convertible to dollars, open its markets, and end imperial trade preferences. In simple terms, Britain had to dismantle the economic foundations of its empire. It agreed. It had no choice. Take India, Britain's crown jewel for 2 centuries. It funded wars, absorbed British goods, and filled London's banks. But after World War II, India flipped from an asset to an expense. British troops had to be paid, infrastructure rebuilt, and political unrest was exploding. Britain couldn't afford any of it. So in 1947, Britain did the unthinkable. It left. Not because it wanted to, but because it couldn't afford to stay. India wasn't so much liberated as it was liquidated. Palestine followed the same pattern. British soldiers were caught between factions, facing bombings and uprisings. The costs were endless. The treasury ran the numbers, and every month Britain stayed. It lost money it didn't have. So in 1948, Britain walked away. The empire didn't retreat strategically. It defaulted geographically. Once India and Palestine fell, the illusion shattered across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The message was clear. Britain couldn't afford an empire anymore. Within 20 years, India, Pakistan, Burma, Ceylon, Palestine, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Malaysia, all gone, not conquered. Cuscut. In 1956, Britain tried to act like an empire one last time during the Suez Crisis. When Egypt nationalized the canal, Britain invaded alongside France. Militarily, it succeeded. Financially, it collapsed. The United States threatened to cut off loans, and the pound began to crash. Britain withdrew in humiliation. That moment marked the end. The empire wasn't defeated. It was foreclosed. Britain finished paying its American war loan in 2006. 60 years after the war ended, an empire that once ruled the world spent decades just paying interest on its survival. Empires aren't always killed by enemies. Sometimes, they're killed by math. Britain didn't fall because it lost battles. It fell because it lost solvency, and that is the most dangerous truth of modern power. You need to conquer a nation. You just need to finance it. If you found this story fascinating, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.